Well, hello there. This is Lopan Yudron. I'm totally here to help you bring the teachings of the Buddha and the practices of Buddhism into your life. So let's get started. What I'm seeing right now is I keep sort of monitoring the large Facebook groups about Buddhism and how to get started. There's this whole variety of Facebook groups there, most of which are pretty much unmoderated, so that all replies are welcome, any perspective is welcome, and that has its own merit. But what I'm seeing happening is that a lot of people, I would say women more than men, are coming to those online groups very genuinely with personal issues, oftentimes would be directed into the ethics category in Buddhism, like, this awful thing happened to me, my husband was unfaithful, and now I'm getting a divorce, everybody's siding with him, what do I do? Now, if you're going to a legal aid group, you'd expect one answer, right? And if you're going to an emotional support group, you'd expect one answer. But I think these people, mostly women, are coming to these general Buddhism groups to kind of figure out how to navigate a really difficult situation ethically. They want to be a good person. They don't want to be a nasty person. And they know Buddhism emphasizes ethics and how to bring it into your daily life, so they're asking for advice. But what is it they say? Looking for love in all the wrong places. 90% of the responses have nothing to do with Buddhism. It's all mixed together. So they may have value or not have value. Everybody has an opinion. But it's clear from looking at it that very few of those people are qualified teachers of the actual teachings of the Buddha in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not setting myself up as some kind of expert. But at least I practiced for a long time and been under the guidance of teachers for a long time, which we'll talk about right now. So it's a mistake to bring your Buddhist questions to mostly American people not even from a heritage Buddhist society, who really are also there looking for answers and may have no or little background in Buddhism. What you want is called a spiritual friend. That's like a technical term in Buddhism. Right from the very earliest Buddhism, there was this term, originally in Pali, it was Kalyani Mita. And forgive me if my pronunciation is not perfect. And then Kalyani Mitra in Sanskrit, the Indian languages which form the basis for all of the Buddhist dissemination of Buddhist teachings. So Buddhism, just like, imagine if you were from a Christian society, dominant Christian society. Christianity, since its founding, has taken all kinds of shapes and forms all over the world, emphasizing different scriptural passages and so forth, and it's over 2,000 years. And now, Buddhism is older. Buddhism has become quite diverse. But because of this scriptural foundation, there's always some commonality on the basic teachings of the Buddha. And the role of the spiritual friend is one of those things. So, because the Buddha said in the what's called it, the Digajanu Sutta, one of the early Buddhist sutras, he referred to, this is about peer relationships. Um, and what is meant by an admirable friendship? There is a case where a lay person, I went right to the section on lay people because that's who we are. Yeah, most of the people watching this. In whatever town or village he may dwell, spends time with householders or householders' sons, young or old, who are advanced in virtue. He talks with them, engages in them in discussions. He emulates consummate conviction in those who are consummate in conviction, consummate virtue in those who are consummate in virtue, consummate generosity in those who are consummate in generosity, and consummate discernment in those who are consummate in discernment. This is called an admirable friendship. In other words, they aren't just shooting the shit. This monk, and there were later, during the Buddha's lifetime, nuns became a thing, but here we're talking about a monk going to, it's okay to go and associate and have, meaningful conversations about Dharma, about virtue, and how to be generous and so forth with members of the community. In fact, that's really, really positive. And then in other passages, he talks about the role of the Kalyana Mitra, as Bhikkhu Bodhi says, in a sort of vertical fashion. So there's somebody, and here's what I'm talking about. You want to go to somebody who's got some practice and study of actual Dharma under their belt if you're going to go for advice about Dharma. Likewise, if you're going to go for advice about your sex life, you're not going to go to a monk, right? That would be inappropriate in so many ways. So we have this horizontal relationship where instead of going out to bars or going to a sports game and so forth, you're connecting. These people are connecting who are high-minded people who are interested in listening to Dharma talks. They're interested in participating in meditation retreats and studying the Dharma. And they're relating all the experiences in their lives to Dharma in an uplifted way. And so there's this dedication to the common teachings of the Buddha. But the teacher role is also called a Kalyana Mitra, which is an elevated status. And this ideal teacher should have, knowledge of the texts of their tradition and abundant practical experience in following the teachings. And I am following Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's really just a consummate scholar and monk and translator, more or less in the early Buddhist traditions, very non-sectarian, however. So this kind of teacher was actually called like a monk friend, literally, from way back. Has 7 qualities. Can you guess what they are? Well, actually, lovableness is one of them. Not romantic lovableness or sexual lovableness, but just an endearing person, right? Esteemableness. Is that really a word? This is Bhikkhu's translation here. So in other words, they generate a feeling of respect and admiration in you. Venerableness, very similar to really respect. You really respect them. The ability to counsel well. They can give good advice, and they're naturally skilled in it. And they're patient when they're listening to you, right? And they're able to give deep discourses. So discourses means like formal discussions of a topic in speech or writing. And also they don't, the 7th one is they don't participate in kind of useless, silly things. They're serious people. I'm not saying humorless. So those 7 qualities you want a teacher to have. And now, does every teacher add up to having every quality perfectly? No, it's hard to find any teacher. Actually, the Buddha himself was the perfect spiritual friend, but he's not obviously with us right now. And like his immediate disciples would have been great spiritual friends, but they're not here either. So we have to rely on people who've practiced and studied a lot, and but yet are not perfect. We're talking here from a Sutrayana point of view, from Mahayana and the early Buddhist tradition. So what do they need? They need a clear understanding of the fundamental principles of the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. They need a sincere dedication to correct practice. And they have to want to teach and share the Dharma with their friendees. I'm going to say disciples is the commonly translated word. And at times, they have to be willing to, and the student has to be willing to receive correction when they've gone off course. They even being admonished, scolded. But they have to be open to having their faults pointed out, and having their, the teacher attempt to correct their faults. And that we're sensitive little boos, aren't we? So generally, good spiritual teachers wait a really long time, and then there's a moment where there's enough trust on the student's part where both parties know that it's okay to say this was not all the time. The general atmosphere of Buddhism, the activity of its Buddha is 90% peaceful, right? Very peaceful, calm, so forth. And actually, when they're correcting, they should be peaceful and calm. There's no, because they perfected their practice. So they're losing it. And, a real teacher doesn't lose it on anybody. Although they may speak firmly at times, like a child that is going to the edge of a cliff or near the hot stove. You don't say, well, dear, could you please gently back away from that stove? Like, get away from that stove, like that. So that is fully within the role of the all Buddhist teachers everywhere. So we have to get used to that idea. And what's the role of the student? The role of the student is to have faith in their teacher if they've reflected on and found a good one. Confidence that the teacher has a superior person to them, to their own practice, and is able to help them. And they've asked around, or looked on Google or whatever, to make sure this is a good person and is everything they say they are. But it's often, to somebody who practices, it's obvious who's a good teacher and a good practitioner most of the time. You can just see it written all over them. But to somebody, if you've never done Dharma practice, then a lot of egotistical, agitated, out of control behavior can look normal to you, coming from a family with, where that kind of thing went on. Coming from regular people, you just don't have any model or way you don't have that thermometer inside to really measure what's this person in front of you and who are they. Well, so it's not a blind faith, but it's a trusting confidence in the capacity of the teacher. It's a trust that the teacher's invested a long period of time in their own spiritual development and is therefore qualified. In most traditions, it's very clear who's qualified because the organization, the head, the lineage, and so forth authorizes people. But now we have a situation where we're in, I'm in the United States. We come from a non-heritage Buddhist society. So we don't know. Teachers are popping up all over the place. We aren't in contact with their lineage and so forth. Lineage means their tradition. The people that train them, if they're still alive, have given them the stamp of approval, sometimes literally with a stamp on a letter. So both the teacher and the student need to have faith in the three jewels. So you should be a Buddhist. You should take in refuge in the three jewels. It's a really good idea, and do it wholeheartedly. And that's a vow, that this is the way you're approaching your spiritual life, your ethical life, your life. Really commit yourself to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Otherwise, why are you asking advice from a Buddhist teacher? I mean, some might disagree because people like a Dalai Lama or Pema Chödrön or Roshi Joan Halifax, for example, they see mostly probably other kinds of people who aren't committed to Buddhism. Those are kind of a special case. They've decided with their careers to, bring the message of, say, compassion to the world. There's two ways that ego are being undermined here. Can you see that? The sense of self. One is in the teacher. The teacher is being viewed as a high person, higher than other people. Even though they may say otherwise, and they should say otherwise, and they should mean otherwise by the student's perspective. They're seeking out advice from somebody more farther along the path than they are. So the teacher has to constantly be working at undermining a sense of, they call it pride officially, but like narcissism, like getting puffed up, taking themselves too seriously. You'll see these comments from teachers and Buddhist teachers in all traditions, like, "Oh, I'm nobody," da 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 da. You really should go to so and so. They're a good teacher. These are the ways that we work with our minds, and then, or should be. So you shouldn't see somebody who appears to be puffed up or really to take themselves too seriously. And then, so the teacher's working on the ego, and then the student is opening themselves after appropriate time of coming to trust this person, to this kind of every now and then correction, to advice, and that's saying, I need help. I don't know how to I'm doing this new thing. I'm switching, in our case, completely from the values, 180 degrees from the values of the surrounding society. I don't know how to practice. I need help. And that's, so I admire that quality in the women that are posting to these Facebook groups. They're saying, I need help. And so, how do you do? So there's a habit in all Buddhist cultures of like standing up when the teacher comes in the room. Maybe you put your hands together like this, bowing. For Tibetan tradition, you bow all the way down to the ground. But don't do that unless it's appropriate. This is Anjali, or Taojo in Tibetan. Palms join. Okay? So, in that way, we're saying, yeah, you do know something I don't know, which is almost unheard of in our YouTuber, right? Suddenly we're an expert on everything on YouTube, right? So, and you'd want to speak to the teacher politely and with a humble demeanor. This is from Bhikkhu Bodhi, who always presents a wonderful teacher you can find on YouTube, still alive, and always presents with a humble demeanor. So the student should listen without resentment, without vindictiveness, without arguing back, without complaints. So what is the Dharma about? Well, largely it's about abandoning your faults and bringing in virtue instead. That's just at a very basic level. So another thing I wanted to address as I was looking in this book today, Daughters of the Buddha, from the first conference of Buddhist nuns. Karma Lekshe Tsomo, great nun, I believe, lives primarily in Hawaii, but travels all over the world. So from this first conference in 1987, a nun named Ayakema, who created a community of nuns on an island in Sri Lanka, that is now no longer a nunnery, because she's passed on. I guess it didn't survive. She noted that when people came there to practice intensively, they thought they wanted to do that. She didn't really attract a lot of people that wanted to become monastics. She thought she would, but she didn't. A lot of mental problems came forward. So they may have had mental health problems that kind of popped up periodically in their lives. But then this intensive practice which is, I've got to say, I don't know how she was structuring things, but having been in a structured group retreat for years, like many people, it's stressful. You think, oh, you got to relax. No, it's really stressful maintaining a structure. In our case, we're diminishing our sense of personal identity inevitably through just abiding by like a quasi-military schedule, with periods of time that most of which are structured. So that alone could bring up a lot of stuff for people. I don't know what her particular group was, what was coming up for them, but she got serious mental health episodes coming up for people. And her experience in general was when people start to practice Dharma intensively, that defilements came up in a rush in the first 2 years. So we had this sense of, very short time. We got it. We got this Dharma thing. We know how to practice. And she was saying very frankly in this book, from the Sakyadhita First Nuns Conference, that the more you work on yourself, the more rubbish comes out. That's the way she put it. And eventually it clears up a little bit after that first 2 years, and then, grows gradually. And also she pointed out, and I guess she was attracting mostly Westerners there. I don't know. She said people in Asia have problems, but they don't talk about them. Western people talk about problems, even when they don't have any. From her point of view, anyway, they don't have any. So it's really difficult to generalize between Asia and the West. These are such broad categories. Many people point out it's just inappropriate. But I would say between heritage Buddhist societies and non-Buddhist societies like ours, there's a big difference that I've observed, that people don't feel that talking about emotions really helps much. And they have other ways of processing things. So there was interesting, if you want to know more about this, shoot me a message. But I'm not seeing any comments yet. A woman, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, a doctoral candidate, did a study on the how Tibetan people in Dharamsala, India, was a large Tibetan population, process trauma, which they had a lot of trauma, especially in the days when people were pouring out of Tibet as refugees over the mountains, some dying on the mountains, tremendous suffering, persecution in Tibet, then infectious diseases coming into India in a hot environment. I mean, it was one thing after another, but their way was to process it in terms of karma. Being raised, these are not fancy people, Buddhist scholars or nuns or monks or anything, just everybody. Because you're raised with the idea of karma, and that all sentient beings, it's often said, have been your mother in some previous life, they literally believe in the core, at least at this time when she did the study, which wasn't that long ago, that we had relationships with these people who are causing us the most trouble. That comes from our karma with them from previous lives, that perhaps we've done something wrong to them, and in the future we'll have a different kind of relationship with each other. That's the thinking, and that kind of thinking kind of calms down a lot of the drama about us, like not saying that you're over there, you're bad, you have nothing to do with me, how did you screw me over, I'm over here, I'm in the right, you oppress me, no matter how deserved it was. And I found this in my own training with Lama Tarchen Rinpoche. I used to joke that I could go in with my head, somebody's had chopped off my head, and with my head tucked under my arm, and the mouth would be going and saying, Rinpoche, somebody chopped off my head. And he would be going, oh, why, like basically looking at me like, why are you blaming other people for your problems? And because if we really take karma seriously, it's not like that. So, and also if we take past and future lives seriously, which is a decision. It's a decision. You may be somebody who had big memories of past lives and so forth in your childhood. You may be a special person from a non-Buddhist society who has some reason to believe in rebirth. But it's way, way different than being raised from babyhood in a society where karma and rebirth are given. Right? So I guess that's all. Do you have any questions or comments today? Nice to see people watching. So that's it. I guess that's it. I'll see you next Monday. And whatever way I can help, you can also drop me a line anytime. I'm sure you can find me. And let me know what topics you'd like me to address. Bye now.